There has never been a single confirmed fatal attack on a human by a wild orca, not one. And that's not because they don't notice us. We call them killer whales. We put them in shows. We think of them as the ocean's charismatic performers. Intelligent, yes, but still just animals. Large dolphins, really. Mammals doing what mammals do. But when you look closely at what orcas actually are, when you examine not just what they do, but how they do it and why, something starts to feel wrong. Because nothing about orcas fits the pattern. Not their bodies, not their behavior, not the way every other species in the ocean reacts to their presence. And the more scientists study them, the more one question keeps surfacing. At what point does an animal stop being an animal? For decades, we've been conditioned to see orcas a certain way. The name killer whale always felt a little dramatic, overblown. They're sociable, they travel in families, they have distinct personalities. In captivity, they learned tricks. They seem to enjoy human interaction. We built an entire image around them. Playful giants, misunderstood predators, the wolves of the sea. And on the surface, that image held. But it was built on a very specific omission. We ignored what they do when we're not watching. Because in the wild, orcas don't perform. They operate. And the gap between those two realities is where the truth lives. In the 1960s and 70s, when marine parks first began capturing orcas, trainers noticed something immediately. These animals learned faster than any species they'd worked with before. Faster than dolphins, faster than sea lions. An orca could learn a complex routine in a fraction of the time. But more than that, they seemed to understand the concept of performance itself. They knew they were being watched. They knew when they'd done something correctly, not because of the reward, but because of the reaction. Some trainers reported that orcas would deliberately make mistakes during practice, then perform flawlessly during shows, as if they understood the difference, as if they were conserving effort. But there was something else trainers noticed, something that didn't make it into the promotional material. The orcas were watching them back, not just during training, all the time, studying movements, routines, weaknesses. One veteran trainer described it as being constantly evaluated. And in that controlled environment, with humans in charge and orcas in tanks, that intelligence seemed manageable, impressive, but manageable. But that's not where orcas evolved. They evolved in open ocean, where there are no walls, no schedules, no one in charge but them. An orca's body is not designed like other apex predators. Sharks are efficiency machines, streamlined, solitary, driven by hunger and blood, built for ambush, built to survive. Orcas are built for something else. They're not the fastest animal in the ocean. They're not the largest, but their body is a study in controlled power. Muscle density that allows for sudden, devastating bursts of speed, up to 35 miles per hour in short distances. A tail fluke so strong that it can propel their 6-ton body almost entirely out of the water. And then there's the brain. An orca's brain weighs 15 pounds, 4 times larger than a human brain. But size alone doesn't tell the full story. It's the structure that matters. Orcas have a highly developed limbic system, the part of the brain that processes emotions and social bonds. In fact, they have an entire section of the limbic system that humans don't have. Scientists call it the paralimbic lobe. We don't fully understand what it does, but it's massive. And it's connected to the parts of the brain that process identity, memory, and social awareness, which means orcas may experience emotions and social connections in ways we can't even conceptualize. They also have spindle cells, specialized neurons associated with higher-order thinking, empathy, and problem-solving. Only 4 species have them: humans, great apes, elephants, and cetaceans. But orcas have more spindle cells than any of them, more than us. Then there's echolocation. Orcas use it the way we use sight. They send out clicks, up to 300 per second, and interpret the returning echoes to build a three-dimensional image of their surroundings. But their echolocation is so precise, so refined, that they can detect the internal structure of objects. They don't just see a seal, they see its heart rate, its breathing pattern, whether it's injured, whether it's pregnant. They can see what's inside you before they get close. And their bite force, estimated at 19,000 pounds per square inch, is enough to crush bone in a single clamp, enough to kill most prey instantly. But here's the part that doesn't fit. They almost never use it that way, because orcas don't hunt like predators. They hunt like tacticians. In 1987, a researcher named John Ford was studying orcas in the Pacific Northwest. He noticed something strange. A pod he'd been observing had developed a technique for hunting seals on ice floes. They would swim in formation beneath the ice, creating a coordinated wave that tipped the flow and slid the seal into the water. It was coordinated, precise, devastatingly effective. But that wasn't the strange part. The strange part was that only one pod knew how to do it. Another pod, hunting the same prey in the same region, just miles away, had never been observed using that method. They had their own. And when Ford tracked the young orcas from the first pod over several years, he watched them teach the technique to their offspring. This is called cultural transmission, and outside of humans, it is extraordinarily rare. Most animals are born with instinct. Instinct tells a spider how to build a web. Instinct tells a bird when to migrate. Some animals can learn. A rat can learn a maze. A dog can learn commands. A few animals can solve problems. Crows can use tools. Octopi can open jars. But orcas do something different. They pass down information across generations, not through genetics, but through teaching. Deliberate, intentional teaching. They have dialects, pods in different regions, sometimes separated by just a few hundred miles, have distinct vocal patterns. The calls are so specific that researchers can identify which pod an orca belongs to just by listening. An orca from one family would sound completely foreign to another. They don't just communicate. They have language, regional language. And they have roles. In most pods, older females lead. They're called matriarchs, and they don't lead through strength. They lead through knowledge. They remember migration routes that span thousands of miles. They remember which hunting grounds are productive in which seasons. They remember where predators gather, where storms hit, where the ocean changes. Some matriarchs are estimated to be 70, 80, even 90 years old, and they carry decades of information that keeps the pod alive. Younger males, on the other hand, often carry out specific tasks during hunts.
They're faster, more aggressive. They take risks the matriarch won't. There is structure. There is hierarchy. There is culture. And once you accept that orcas have culture, you're no longer talking about animal behavior. You're talking about civilization. Off the coast of Argentina, there's a beach called Punta Norte. And on that beach, a group of orcas does something that should not be possible. They beach themselves, intentionally. They wait for the tide. They observe seal pups learning to swim in the shallows, wobbling in the surf, still clumsy, still vulnerable. And then, at the exact right moment, they propel themselves onto the shore at full speed, 6 tons of muscle and momentum, snatch the seal, and use the receding wave to slide back into the ocean. The entire maneuver takes seconds. This is not instinct. Instinct doesn't calculate tide schedules. Instinct doesn't wait. Instinct doesn't practice. And that's exactly what young orcas in that region do. Researchers have observed juveniles practicing the technique on smaller, safer beaches, testing their timing, learning how much speed they need, how to angle their bodies, how to use the water's momentum to get back. They fail sometimes. They strand themselves and have to wait for the next wave. But they learn.
And once they master it, they teach it to the next generation. This technique exists in exactly one location on Earth, one pod, because no other orcas need it. They've developed their own methods. In New Zealand, orcas were observed following fishing boats, not for scraps, for strategy. They learned that boats meant fish, but more than that, they learned which boats used which methods: long-line boats, trawlers, net fishermen. They could predict when nets would be pulled up, and they would position themselves in specific locations to intercept the catch. But it went further than that. Some boats started changing their routes to avoid the orcas, and the orcas adapted. They started following the boats from a distance, staying just out of sight, waiting until the nets were deployed. They adjusted their behavior based on human behavior. They learned our patterns. In Patagonia, orcas hunt stingrays. This alone is unusual. Stingrays are venomous. A single strike from their barbed tail can puncture flesh, deliver toxins, cause paralysis or death. Most predators avoid them. Orcas hunt them deliberately, but they don't take risks. They've developed a technique, flipping the ray upside down. When a stingray is inverted, it enters a state called tonic immobility, a kind of temporary paralysis. The ray becomes defenseless, and the orcas know this. They've learned to neutralize the threat before it becomes one. No one taught them this. They figured it out. Off the coast of South Africa, something even stranger started happening in 2017. Orcas began targeting great white sharks. Great whites, apex predators, some of the most feared animals in the ocean, started washing ashore dead. And not just dead, surgically disassembled. Each carcass had the same wound, a clean tear along the underside, liver removed, the rest of the body left intact. Great white shark livers are enormous, up to a quarter of the shark's body weight, and they're rich in fats and oils. And orcas, somehow, know this. They know which organ to take. They know how to extract it without wasting time on the rest. Researchers eventually identified two orcas responsible, a pair of males named Port and Starboard. And once those two figured out the method, other orcas in the region started doing it too, because they watched, they learned. And now, great white shark populations along that coastline have abandoned their hunting grounds entirely. An entire apex predator species displaced, not by competition, by calculated predation. Here's where it stops feeling like biology and starts feeling like dominance. When orcas arrive in an area, everything changes. Great white sharks flee. Entire populations have been documented abandoning prime hunting grounds, areas they've used for generations, the moment orcas are detected, and they don't come back. Not for months, sometimes not for years. Humpback whales, which have no reason to fear most predators, react to orca calls with immediate panic. They've been observed traveling miles out of their way to avoid orca territory. Mothers with calves will breach repeatedly, slapping the water to create noise and confusion. They know what orcas are capable of. Seals beach themselves. Entire colonies will haul out onto land and stay there, even when they're hungry, even when the tide is perfect for hunting, because the water isn't safe. Dolphins go silent, normally vocal, playful, active. When orcas are near, dolphins stop calling. They travel in tight, nervous formations. Even fish patterns shift. Schools break apart. Migration routes change. The ocean doesn't just acknowledge orcas, it rearranges itself around them. But here's the part that makes it even stranger. This isn't universal. In some regions, orcas and dolphins cooperate. Not in a predator-prey dynamic, not in competition, in partnership. There are documented cases of dolphins helping orcas locate fish schools. In return, the orcas allow the dolphins to feed alongside them. No aggression, no dominance displays, just cooperation. In other regions, orcas have been observed defending humpback whales from attacking sharks. Why? No one knows. There's no obvious benefit. Humpbacks aren't part of the orca's social structure. They're not prey. They're not allies in any traditional sense. But the orcas intervene anyway. They've been seen charging at sharks mid-attack, driving them off, staying with the whale until it's safe. It's not instinct. It's not pack behavior. It's decision-making, selective enforcement. Because orcas don't kill everything they can. They kill what they choose, and they protect what they choose. And no one can explain why. Orcas are the only apex predator on Earth with no natural predators. Not as adults, not as juveniles, not even as calves. The pod structure makes them nearly untouchable from birth. They sit alone at the top of the food chain, unchallenged, across every ocean on the planet. And it's not because they're the biggest. Sperm whales are larger. Blue whales dwarf them. A full-grown blue whale weighs 30 times what an orca weighs. It's not because they're the strongest. A healthy adult sperm whale could injure or kill an orca in a direct fight. It's because no one wants to fight them. Not because they can't be beaten, but because the cost is too high. Orcas don't fight alone. Ever. An attack on one orca is an attack on the pod, and the pod does not forget. There are documented cases of orcas holding grudges. In the early 2000s, a fishing boat off the coast of Alaska accidentally injured an orca with its propeller. The boat left. The season ended. 6 months later, that same boat returned to the same fishing grounds, and the orcas returned with it. They followed the boat for days. They didn't attack. They didn't need to. They stayed close, watching, making their presence known. The crew eventually abandoned the area. In 2020, a group of orcas off the coast of Spain began ramming sailboats. Not randomly, not all boats, specific boats, specific designs. Researchers believe the orcas were targeting boats with rudders that resembled the hull design of a vessel that had previously injured a member of the pod. They remembered, and they responded. This isn't reaction. This is recognition. This is memory. This is something closer to revenge. But there's another side to this. Because for all their power, for all their intelligence, orcas don't attack humans. Not in the wild. There are thousands of interactions every year. Swimmers, divers, kayakers, surfers. People who are alone in the water, vulnerable, indistinguishable from prey. And orcas leave them alone. Not sometimes, always. In some regions, orcas swim directly up to boats, close enough to touch. They float beside kayaks. They circle divers. They observe. And then they leave. There are cases of orcas approaching humans who are struggling in the water, drowning, injured, disoriented. And instead of attacking, the orcas stay close. They circle slowly, almost protectively, as if they're waiting to see if the human needs help. Why? Why would an apex predator, an animal with no natural enemies, an animal that kills great white sharks for their livers, an animal capable of sophisticated, coordinated hunting strategies, why would that animal choose not to harm the most vulnerable species it encounters? Some researchers believe it's because we're not part of their diet. Orcas are specialized hunters. Each pod has preferred prey. Some eat fish, some eat seals, some eat whales, and they stick to what they know. But that doesn't explain the protection. That doesn't explain why they intervene when humans are in danger. Other researchers think it's recognition, that orcas understand on some level that humans are different, that we're intelligent, that we're aware. And maybe, they've decided we're not worth killing. Not because they can't, but because they've chosen not to. Scientists don't like to anthropomorphize. It's a foundational rule. You don't project human traits onto animals. You observe behavior. You record data. You avoid bias. But with orcas, that rule keeps breaking. Because how do you describe an animal that teaches, that plans, that selectively enforces dominance, forms alliances, holds grudges, and changes its behavior based on observation of other species, including humans? How do you classify an animal that has culture, language, and strategy? An animal that makes decisions that seem to have moral weight? At a certain point, the word animal starts to feel insufficient.
Not because orcas are human, but because they might be something else entirely. Something we don't have a word for yet. In 2009, researchers at the University of St. Andrews conducted an experiment. They placed an underwater microphone near a pod of orcas off the coast of Scotland. The orcas weren't hunting, they weren't traveling, they were just talking. For hours. The vocalizations were complex, layered. They followed patterns, calls, pauses, responses. It wasn't random noise. It was conversation. The researchers recorded over 6 hours of audio, and when they analyzed it later, they found something they didn't expect. The orcas were taking turns. One would vocalize, the others would go quiet. Then another would respond, back and forth, structured, deliberate, like a discussion. But here's the part that kept the researchers awake. Every so often, maybe once every 20 or 30 minutes, the orcas would go completely silent. No calls, no clicks, nothing. Just silence. And in that silence, they would turn, all of them, at once, toward the microphone, as if they knew it was there, as if they knew they were being listened to. The researchers reviewed the footage again and again. Every time the silence came, the orcas reoriented. They looked directly at the device. And then, after a long pause, sometimes 30 seconds, sometimes a full minute, they would turn away and resume talking. One researcher described it as being studied in return. Another said it felt like the orcas were deciding whether to acknowledge the microphone, whether to let the researchers know they knew. We've shared the ocean with orcas for millennia. We've studied them, filmed them, written about them, tried to categorize them, tried to understand them, but we've never asked the one question that might actually matter. Do they understand us? Not just recognize us, understand us, our patterns, our technology, our intentions. Because if they do, if they've been watching us the way we've been watching them, then every interaction we've ever had with them takes on a different meaning. Every time an orca chose not to attack, every time they swam close and then away, every time they saved a human, or ignored one, or circled one and left, those weren't accidents. Those were decisions. And if they've been making decisions about us this entire time, what have they decided? And why haven't they told us yet? Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe for more.